Servus, Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. On the last weekend or on this weekend, I read a very funny article about the CDU politician from Germany, Armin Laschet. Now, Armin Laschet is a very important central figure in Angela Merkel's CDU party. He is the governor of North Rhine-WestPhalia, the largest state in Germany, the largest federal state by population. And this is a notorious state, of course. But that is not the purpose of this video. I made many videos about that. Yeah, the article was actually quite funny. This guy, he visited a Greek island, the island of Lesbos, and he didn't go there to find out what it means to really feel like a woman in 2020. No, he wanted to visit some, let's call them irregular visitors to Europe. Okay, I mean, there are a couple of names or words that start with the letter I that come closer to the truth, but maybe I shouldn't use those, even though they are more appropriate and more accurate, of course. So what did he try to do there? Of course, there is nothing that he could do there that he couldn't have done via the phone or by just calling someone who works there with these people, let's call them. No, the purpose was, of course, to take some dramatic pictures, like he posing in front of some colorful people who make sad faces and puppy eyes and demand to be let into Europe. I mean, technically they are in Europe already, but they're kind of stuck on this island. That used to be actually a very, very beautiful island, and it could be again, actually, if those people weren't there. It was actually, tourists came there to spend their vacation there, but I don't think anybody wants to do that now. So in today's video, I want to tell you a little bit about Armin Laschet, who I mentioned him before in several videos when it was about who will be the next leader of the CDU, who will be the next chancellor or candidate to be chancellor. And by the looks of it right now, whoever will lead the CDU will probably be the next chancellor of Germany, unless something very strange or very profound happens to the party landscape and the polls right now. But so I want to tell you a little bit about him, and then I want to tell you what he did there and what happened, and what that actually means for Germany and for the way he thinks about Germany and the Germans. Okay, but before I start, I want to thank all my subscribers and supporters again. Please. It is very, very important that you bang the bell. I've never said that, but if you are watching this on YouTube, down below the screen, there is this notification bell. And I think I have the suspicion that a lot of the people who are subscribed to me are not being notified. So if you haven't done so already, and if you wish to get notified about new uploads from my side, you can either join me on Telegram, where I post updates whenever I put out a new video, or you can just get updates via YouTube if you bang that bell and hope for the best. I hope this still works. I have the suspicion it doesn't work, or that many people didn't do that and it became more important on YouTube. I don't know. So please do that if you want to get notified via YouTube. In the links down below, if you want to support my work, you find some links there to PayPal, Patreon, or Subscribestar. I would very much appreciate your support. But now let's get into it. So what happened? So he went to that island, and of course he wanted to have some dramatic pictures, some emotional pictures, that instill certain emotions with the people who would read the articles and who would see these pictures then that would undoubtedly appear in all the mainstream news outlets. But the story didn't quite work out the way he planned, it seems, because of course he doesn't go there alone, right? There is a local security detail, and they were following him all around, so he had a lot of security around. He's pretty much, scared of these people, obviously. Otherwise, he wouldn't need this huge security detail. And these people, the security team, they told him then that it's no longer safe for him to be there, and they strongly urge him to break off his photo op thing, his photo shooting thing he had going on there. And it is quite funny, because I think these irregular tourists or visitors or whatever, they mistook him for the king of Germany or some chieftain or something that could just bring them to Germany. Yeah, that's not really the case. I mean, he tries to do that. Several other left-leaning governors are doing this, and our Minister Seehofer, I talked a lot about him, so I'm not a big fan of his, but it seems like he is undermining their plans to do so. But let's get back to the story. So he had to cancel his photo shoot then, as a lot of these irregular visitors were assembling in front of him, and they were shouting, "Close Casa Doom," or Moria, or whatever they call this thing there, and which basically means that they relatively, I wouldn't say violent, but in a clear way, angrily demanded entry into Europe. And it became more and more and more people around him. And then the security guy says, "Dude, we have to cancel this. I think you should get out of here." Which he did then, of course. He didn't, bathe in the crowd, and he didn't shake hands or kiss them or wash their feet or ask them how they're doing. No, he just left because he was afraid. Which begs the question, of course, if he wants to bring these people into Germany or Europe, where is our security force? Where are the 20 security guys who are guarding every German citizen on his way to work? Or, when he goes grocery shopping or just taking a walk on a Sunday afternoon with his family, where is our security squad? Where are the securities who are making sure that we don't get attacked by them? And that's the thing, his life is valuable, he is afraid for his own security. This is why he leaves. And at the same time, he wants to bring them in. I mean, I once made a video that was called "Security for Me, but not for thee," and it was about the greatest ally of the US and how they deal with these colorful visitors. It was, of course, deleted by YouTube instantly, but and I got in trouble over this, of course. But it is the same mentality, right? So these people, they are afraid for their own life when they're confronted with these folks, but at the same time, they still want to bring them into Europe, and they want them to just walk around the streets of Germany, getting welfare here and just, walking and living amongst us, giving them every opportunity they need in order to harm us. Absolutely crazy, these people. They must have such a low opinion, or even, I mean, they must be disgusted by German citizens. I mean, they must really wish to harm us, these politicians. I mean, there is no other explanation. If he was afraid of them, but still wants to bring them into Europe, that means he hates European people. That's the only explanation. That's the only scenario in which these actions, I'm not talking about words, I'm talking about actions, how these actions of his make any sense whatsoever. Okay, now I want to tell you a little bit about him, now that I explained to you or reported to you what this recent story about him was, and what that actually tells you already about him. So he was born in, I think, 1961. Don't quote me, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I link the Wikipedia article down below so you can check if my short-term memory works correctly. So he was born in the beginning of the 60s in a near Aachen, that's near the border to the Netherlands and Belgium, on the German side, of course. And he speaks fluent French, I read, which is interesting. And he is married, 3 kids, devout Catholic, and he studied law. And after his first state examination, he switched to journalism, I think. And then he was pretty much done with his studies in the in the middle of the 80s, and from the middle of the 80s till the middle of the 90s, he kind of worked for the Bavarian public broadcasting service as a correspondent in our then capital of Bonn. Um, and then he worked also for a Catholic newspaper. But that is not, I mean, I always judge people by whether or not they have free market experience, yeah, if they worked in the free market. If you work in Germany for a church newspaper that has nothing to do with the free market whatsoever, right? I mean, these newspapers are owned by the church and everyone is paid by the church, and the church gets church tax, every Protestant, every Catholic, they all have to pay the church tax, and that means, and also most of the inner cities of German towns are owned by the church, or in many cities at least, so they are landlords and they get that church tax, and so they have very deep pockets. So if you work for one of their propaganda for one of their newspapers, to humor the masses about their point of view, then you have a pretty safe job and you don't need to care about who's buying that newspaper, because these newspapers will be printed no matter if anybody reads them or not, or buys them, or wants to see them. They could use them to, as toilet paper or whatever, and these editors and these journalists working there would still make the same. Okay, and then from the middle of the 90s, he got full into politics, and that means at no second in his entire life he actually did any productive work or worked in the free market or has any productive work experience under his belt. So it's a complete public sector clown who has no experience from the real world. And of course, these people are very much at home in Angela Merkel's CDU, of course. And I should say that he is probably the most prominent supporter of Angela Merkel's course of action since 2015. He is one of those Catholic socialists, I would say, the bleeding heart Catholic socialist, okay? And that means whenever there is a group that he thinks is like the downtrodden, the poor, he has to jump to the rescue. And of course, the downtrodden and the poor, they are never Germans, of course, because Germans are all rich, Germans are all powerful, we all have a lobby, Germans, we have no problems. And that means that these do-gooders, they have to look for new groups that they can advocate for or champion. And these groups are now the colorful Southerners, of course. Okay, so this guy, he is one of the higher-ups in Angela Merkel's CDU. He wants to be the next leader of the CDU. He is campaigning for that, I should say. He wants to be the next chancellor candidate, and for that, his hottest opponent at the moment is, or competitor is, Dr. Markus Söder from the CSU. During the pandemic, they sharpened their image with respect to each other, because Söder is the law and order tough measures guy, and Armin Laschet is the open the borders, you don't need any protection, everything is fine kind of guy. So these are the images or the reputations that they tried to build up in the public, this is how they positioned themselves. And I think that most Germans are really on Mr. Söder's side, or they would rather have a Mr. Söder kind of policy than a Armin Laschet policy. I'm not necessarily saying I'm agreeing on this very point, but yeah. So, but that is not the only important question. I would even say this pandemic stuff is really, for Germany, it's not the most important political battlefield anymore. I think when it comes to this whole green energy stuff, electric cars, our migration, the borders, all these things, law and order in our cities. That is way more important. Economic policy, industrial policy, way more important right now. And there, Mr. Laschet, in my opinion, falls short. I mean, he has no experience with the industry. He doesn't know how goods and services are produced, how money is made, how wealth is created. He knows nothing about that. And he wants to open the gates. He wants to tear down the walls that protect us. And this is, of course, dangerous. And coming full circle now to the story with which I started, he thinks that his life is worth protecting, but the life of all the people in Germany and all the people in Europe, well, they might as well be endangered. What do I care? I have a security detail. I'm in an armored vehicle. I'm behind concrete, and, every security measure you can imagine is protecting him. But the average citizen who has to drive on the train or ride the bus or, commute to work, or who just buys vegetables or bread on a market or, in a shop, yeah, what about them? Where is their security detail? Where are their bodyguards? I ask you, Mr. Laschet. He probably doesn't have an answer for that. If he has one, I would be very curious to find out what that might be. All right, so now you know a little bit about Mr. Laschet. If you want to find out more, the Wikipedia article is linked down below. The German article from the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung is also linked down below. And let me know what you think about that, and who is the Armin Laschet of your country. If that story and these things I just told you about him, if that rings a bell, or if that is akin to anybody from your own government or a prominent politician in your country, then let me know about that. I'm always curious about stories from other countries and how they relate to what I tell you guys. All right. Take care, and as always, Servus, Kameraden.